I did it again. I was waiting for a magic window to pop up and tell me to be in the meeting and forgot to go click on the calendar item.
You're good. You're good.
I'll figure it out eventually.
Yeah, one of these days.
Can't
That'll
believe
just be the recurring gag.
that.
Never mind.
Can't believe that.
You're good, dude. All right, Mike. Welcome back to the Grumpy Dad podcast. Thank you for joining me today. Thank everybody who has watched. I think there's like 10 of you. We appreciate it.
Love it. Welcome.
Welcome back. I'm Nate, and I make hot sauce.
I'm Mike, and I make custom door chime covers.
Ooh, that's a fun one. All right. This week, why were you grumpy, Mike?
Oh man, there's actually an episode that happened yesterday that sucked. Um, so I have a daughter who has loose lips, and she is a perpetual spoiler. And so we had a moment yesterday. So I'm actually my wife and I are flying out to California tomorrow to buy a car, and the girls know about it. This is my midlife crisis car, my little sports car, and we're gonna fly out together, and we're gonna drive it home and road trip it back home. And the girls know about it, but the boys don't. So I was gonna make it a surprise for them. It wasn't like a big deal or anything. Anyway, we had a
Right.
whole discussion with my daughter, like, when we're telling you like stop talking, that means stop talking. And the boys don't know and don't spoil it and all this stuff. And then last night at dinner in front of them, she did it again. She's like, so mom knows about the car, right? You guys are going to get the car. And I was like, stop it. Stop talking. Don't say anything. And she's like, well, but mom, no. And like, she just was not picking up on the cues.
Oh,
And so I pulled her actually out to the porch, and I was so bummed at my reaction. Like I got really mad. And I think it was a combination of like we literally just talked about this.
right.
But sorry, my voice is a little dry. Anyway, and I was so bummed with myself because like I'm so much bigger than her. And she like started to well up in her eyes, and I was like, this sucks over
Wow.
the dumbest thing. And so we went inside and apologized, and she ended up, she was fine. We had a fine night, but it tore me up really bad last night.
Yeah, I feel
Um,
that.
yeah,
I
I just,
If it makes you feel any better, my wife has had to have conversations with me that are basically at least at least take your kids out to the back porch, right? I have a problem where I'm correcting everybody in front of everybody, and my oldest daughter is not a big fan. And I know that, like we can see that. And I have not been good about at least I mean, so at least you did that, right? You know,
yeah,
I
well, that was
I would have
only
just
because
blown
the
up in front of
situation
my
called for it.
kid.
If it
Yeah,
wasn't because it was
sure.
about a secret, I
Sure.
wouldn't have, because I'm the same way. And just that stunk.
Yep. I
And
get it.
it ate me up last night real bad because it's definitely a part of myself that I've worked really hard as far as like emotional regulation and stuff.
Sure.
I'm really into that because I don't like not feeling like I'm in control of my frustration.
Yeah.
And it came out over the dumbest thing last night. And so that tore me up pretty bad yesterday.
I
But
feel that.
we've had talks and all that since then. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
don't know what
so
it
that
is
made me pretty
about.
grumpy.
I guess growing up, apparently I had this issue, and I don't remember it, but my parents love to tell stories about how Nathan spoiled birthday parties and trips and all kinds of stuff. And I'm just like, I
So
don't even
funny.
remember any of that. And it's funny because now my wife has the worst story of spoiling something because we were we were flying the surprise. There was two surprises. Her mom was having her, I think it was her 50th birthday, and the first surprise was that we were flying up for her 50th birthday because we weren't living in Washington at the time. So we flew up. Her mom came down to her sister's house, and we were there. And all, course, Nana's super happy. She gets to see her other grandkids that she didn't think were coming, and her other daughter that she didn't think was coming to her birthday. It was all very exciting. And it was literally like as she walks in the door, the first surprise has not even finished culminating, right? And my wife says something about, yeah, and I can't wait to go to the baseball game tomorrow.
Oh,
And we were all like, oh, what are you, what? Because grandpa had bought out a suite at the Mariners
oh
for her
wow.
birthday, and so my wife ruined that surprise, and I was like, hey, I'm not the one with the worst surprise ruining story anymore. I'll
Oh,
take it.
and that's such a bummer
uh,
when you're the person that
I
has that
know
lapse,
my
you
wife
know?
felt
Oh,
terrible. She
I
just,
feel so bad for her.
and I try to
That's
think
tough.
about that, and I'm not very good, but because my kids have done the same thing. They spoil stuff all the time, and I try to remember it's because they're excited. Like, that's
Yeah.
it's never anything malicious. Sometimes it's a little behavioral, right? They want to feel special or like the center of attention, and that is something you have to keep an eye on. But most of the time, right? They're excited, to
Yeah.
have that, and so you kind of keep an eye on that.
And
Man,
I think for our number
that's tough
two
though.
that has that issue, it is some of that. It's like, I don't want to say like a sense of power, but it is, right?
Hmm.
And so the issue isn't even just that. It was that she wasn't then picking up on the cues because I can
Right.
understand a lapse in judgment, right? But then when we are like, zip it, that
Right.
doesn't mean push, 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 push. It means
No.
you need to pick up on,
Yeah, I
oh,
feel it.
you know.
I get it.
And so
Yeah.
that was what I was most frustrated about. But um it ended up being, we got through it. But
It's funny.
yeah.
It's my oldest daughter. She's become a little eavesdropper a little bit, and we've been working
Oh,
with
that's
her,
our
being like,
oldest.
"Hey, you can't." It's that age, dude. That like 10 to 15, where they just want to like hang out and like, oh, what are the adults talking about in here? Oh,
Yep. I'm going to pretend to be reading in the other room just that's 15 feet away, but the
oh,
sound doesn't travel in here. Just like you can have a peeing section in a pool, you can have
yeah,
a quiet section in
yeah.
an open room,
It does
like
not. And
that's how it works.
it's funny because she hasn't gotten that subtle yet. She'll just hang out and she'll ask questions, and I'm like, oh, thanks for asking that question. Now we know to not talk about this anymore until you leave the room. And she's like, wait, wait, wait. I was like, hey, if you kept your mouth shut, you might have been able to hang out. Like, and that's I try to pretty frequently like let my kids know, like, hey. Like you're not responsible. I'm the adult here. And if there's a conversation happening, like I'm if you can get away with it, like more power to you. But you opened your big mouth, like you
Yeah,
could have just hung out and tried to figure it out from contextual clues. But now you got to leave, and we're gonna have this discussion without you. So and it's funny that a lot of times I get frustrated when I'm disciplining my kids. It's like I don't mind that you snuck around as much to overcome my rules. It's the fact that you didn't put any effort into it. Like in my day,
be
you
better.
really had to, yeah, you had to kind of set things up. You had to be careful, be cautious. I feel like kids these days, man, they're just blatant about it. It's like, man, well, I mean, you got caught. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, you're done. You should have
Yep,
put more thought and effort into trying to sneak around and figure this out. Like, you can't
that's
leave the
hilarious.
wrappers out. You can't leave, evidence. Like, clean up after yourself. And you would have been able to get away with eating that treat, But which is funny
Sorry.
because that's like the point, right? When I'm telling you I don't want you to eat downstairs, it's because I don't want wrappers and food on the floor.
Right.
So if you eat downstairs and you clean up the wrappers and the food, I don't think we have a problem here.
Right.
Right? Like,
That's
uh,
hilarious. That's
so
so true too. And something Beck and I have been doing is we've been reciprocating. So like we'll sneak up on our girls and listen in, but then we'll like
yeah.
make ourselves known. And it's so funny. We hear the funniest stuff and we'll like, yeah, make ourselves known or allow them to discover us. And we're just like, you know, hiding on the other side of
Ooh.
the door,
Yeah.
or, we have a split level house. So we'll like, the other day we crawled to the top of the stairs when they're in the kitchen talking, and then they turn the corner, they look up and they see us through the
Right. The slats.
the yeah, the slats,
Yeah.
and they started cracking up. It was hilarious. But yeah, I get very conscious though when we're having conversations with other adults, and other adults aren't as
Mhm.
aware
Oh yeah.
of my kids doing that. And I don't want to embarrass my kids, but I also don't want to like tell the adults like, "Hey, shut your mouths. Like
Yeah,
this is
like
not a conversation we should have in front of our children. They are listening." Um, and so that's always a fun one to navigate, but
yeah, man.
I
We
think they're all right. My children seem adjusted, so we haven't said too much stuff, hopefully.
yeah, hopefully. Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
All right, what else you got going on?
So for as far as why it was worth it this week, my youngest had his first grade concert with their music teacher, and it's awesome. It's so good. And they always do a really cool visual number. So like
Yeah,
they did Golden from the Demon, what is it? I can't think of the
K-pop
movie
Demon
name.
Hunters.
K-pop Demon Hunters. Thank you.
Oh yeah.
And instead of singing, they put on these, they turn off the lights. They had these black lights. All the kids' shirts glowed. And they had, that game where you get like a tennis ball, you throw it, you can catch it with a Velcro
Oh
plate,
yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
They had those with stars and they were fluorescent. So they reacted to the black light and they got to
Wow.
do this cool dance number with it. And they do something cool every time. Anyway, being able to do that is why I became an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Um, Even though I tend to work longer hours on any given day, or I'll be busy in the evening or whatever, being able to go to every single one of those things, whether it's a sporting event, whether it's a school event, or whatever the case may be, is like why I do this.
Yeah.
And so being able to
That's
go to
awesome.
that was awesome.
Yeah.
And then I've got another note which I'll save for when we do the follow up of our discussion
Yeah.
on chores last week. But spoiler alert, wow, that cool. That was
Yeah,
great.
that might be my notes as well for that.
Cool.
So,
All right. So what made
um,
you grumpy this week?
oh man, dude, yesterday we're gonna kind of talk about it a little bit later, but what made me grumpy this week was school letting out for day like days off of school, unexpected, just like
That's what
oh
we're doing
yeah,
right
we're
now.
because yeah, I guess President's Day weekend, right? So a lot of kids have extra days off, but it's so frustrating because like sometimes they have our school usually has early release on Fridays, right?
That's
So
cool.
they get out Fridays. I'm like, yeah, that's a pretty cool time to have an early release. That's awesome. If they have Friday off, they don't always get early release on Thursday. Sometimes
Oh,
they
okay.
do, sometimes they don't. And like it's a thing. You got to go like look and check and verify. And I've been busy, so I didn't do any of those things. So I get done with working yesterday at like 1 o'clock, and then all my kids are home instantly. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa! I thought I had 2 more hours to go clean the kitchen, get dinner ready, like pick up the house. Like I am not prepared for this. And all of a sudden, I was just overwhelmed. I was stressed and ended up, grumping on my kids pretty hard and being pretty cranky and yelling and stuff and whipping them into shape and trying to get things done. I was like, man, man, failed so hard at just letting them come home and detox after a long week and hang out. And so I was pretty upset, pretty cranky, and not feeling like that was my best work. But
Well, and that's how it always happens, right? It tends to be when we get caught off guard, like we're on it, and then just out of left field, something happens. Like me with Violet in this
yeah,
conversation, she just push, 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 and I was not ready for that moment to be my best self. And yeah, your kids come home, you're like, wait, what? And that blind side, I'm having a hard time, especially lately, adjusting to
oh yeah,
regulation when I get blindsided. And so that's something I hope to figure out and work on without. It's also exhausting to be 100% vigilant all the time, you know? Like I'm
yeah,
not Jean-Luc Picard of the Starship Enterprise
right,
where all of a sudden, a planet's about to explode and I can just take that in and calm cool, solve the problem.
you
That's not who I am. I wish that'd be cool. But yeah, so I totally get that.
Yeah, I've read last summer I read a book on stoicism and I was like, this might be the greatest like advice
Stoicism's pretty cool.
for managing yourself and your emotions and things of just recognizing it's just what it is, like and so probably need to revisit that on a regular basis, I suppose, but
There's
yeah,
actually a
I kicked
video,
that out.
just a quick plug. So Dr. Becky Kennedy is
Yeah.
a therapist, and she's pretty popular online. And she just did a big think episode where, sits down in the chair, talks about stuff for like an hour and a half.
Sure.
And it's about basically how grown-ups are basically old children. And the lessons like how you behave now is because that's how you were trained when you were
Yeah,
younger. And she talks about emotional regulation, all this stuff.
that's
Super, super
awesome.
good. Connected really well, learned a lot of stuff. And so I highly recommend anyone to check out. Yeah, Dr. Becky.
Yeah, I
What did
definitely
I
will.
say? Becky. I just said it and
I
I've
don't know. I was going to
forgotten.
type it and then I forgot.
Becky Kennedy, Dr. Becky
Kennedy.
Kennedy, and it's her
I'll put it in the
recent
show
big
notes.
big think interview that's like 90 minutes. Um,
It's awesome.
it's so good.
Yeah, I'll
So
have to check it out.
for kids and adults as
Yeah,
well, and explains why you might be the way that you are and
sure.
how to decode that. So
I don't know if I need
that's a
that
little
much
plug.
information, but we'll see how it goes.
It's a good starting point for me. I'm not ready to dive all the way in, but
Yeah.
it's pretty good.
All right. Well, I want to hear how it went last week. So last week we talked about chores and managing kids doing chores. And one of the things we kind of landed on was maybe kids just need one job that they can do by themselves and not share jobs with their siblings. And we just give that to them on a more permanent or semi-permanent basis and let them kind of grow through different jobs, but really give them one to focus on for different seasons of their life. So I want to hear how implementing that went. It sounds like your wife was okay with the idea. That's always the caveat, right? Like you gotta
Yeah.
get buy-in by your partner. How'd it go last week?
So it went surprisingly well. I told Beck about it, and she was basically like, I mean, what do we have to lose, right? Like, we might
Right.
as well. Sure, it sounds great in theory. And we probably had 2 or 3 nights this week, and this is focused specifically around cleanup after dinner, right?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
there's a huge, breadth of chores,
Right.
Saturday chores or whatever. So this is specifically just
Same.
after dinner,
That's
taking
what
care
we
of that.
did. Yep.
And so we talked to the kids. We're like, hey, this is what we're thinking, guys. Older kids, younger kids will have easier stuff. And as they get older, they will take over harder and harder stuff.
Yep.
And so we had Carmen load the dishwasher. And we took from you with your brother, where like, you just stand at the dishwasher. We had Niles was the table clearer. So Niles took all of the plates and stuff that were dirty, threw away. If we used paper plates, he threw those away. If we use actual utensils, took those over to Carmen. Ross put away the food. So I got to work with him like, hey, this food, you just put this in the sink or down the
Yeah.
trash. This food you want to save, you get a Tupperware, put in the fridge.
Yeah.
He did that. And Violet, she unloaded the dishwasher if it needed it, kind of separately, and then we had her wipe counters. She was a little bit more of a floater. I don't think we had anything super defined, and it might have changed a little bit. And there were probably 3 nights where Beck and I just sat there when dinner was over, and we just pointed and said, "All right, do this," and they all did it. They all did it. I think Carmen, the oldest, she grumbled like, "Ugh," and then she got up and went and loaded the dishwasher. And we're like, what is happening? How
Yeah.
did we not do this before even try it?
Right.
And so again, we haven't like locked anything in as far as
Sure. Long
you
long
are this
term,
job.
who knows how this will pan
But
out,
the
right?
structure of mom and dad are going to sit here and direct, and you
Right.
guys are going to follow instructions that are appropriate to your age group. And so you're not going to complain why someone else has a different job. Everyone actually did their job and it got done.
Mhm.
And it was wonderful. So we are going to dive in and expand on this and see where we land. And
Yeah.
it was great.
Like hoping I don't fly too close to the sun on this one because it feels like
Right.
we could just really
Right.
go overboard, but
I don't want to set up a
yeah,
structure that then could break and the whole thing falls apart.
sure.
So that framework of we sit there, we direct, it might be a little bit different each night and we, make those calls. We're starting there.
Yeah, so similar story that we sat down and mostly my wife was like, "Well, I don't know if I'm comfortable with them doing it on like a more permanent basis." And I was like, "That's fine." She said, "But we'll give it a month." And I was like, "That is more than enough to kind of,
Yep.
figure this out." And so we did it for this week. My oldest daughter was in charge of loading the dishwasher, and my so she's 9, turning 10, so she's loading the dishwasher all by herself. And she already kind of knew how to do it. I think she likes it. She's a little more analytical. She's like her mom, a little bit kind of engineering, right? She
It's
likes
like a
the idea
puzzle.
of like, yeah, here's a puzzle. Like, how do I like set everything in perfectly into the dishwasher?
Nice.
And the nice thing is that when you do, turns out when you do the dishes regularly, you don't need to play Tetris in the dishwasher because there's just not that many dishes that have
Right.
piled up day to day.
Right. Throw them in,
So
hit start.
who would have known? So she did a really good job, and we didn't. And the nice thing is because she knows, hey, I can't do my job until my little brother unloads the dishwasher. There's not really any conflict there. She's just like, all right, I'm off the hook until this thing
One
happens,
person
and I'll
job.
like whatever. Like, and so she would just kind of hang out and do her. She would leave the room, walk around. Sometimes she'd get a little directy on her own, and we have to, I got this. I'm okay being the parent in this situation. I don't need your help, right? But that was kind of a good role for her to kind of feel a little bit more of like an overseer.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, because hers was the last job that needed to be done, she gets to do it by herself without little kids crying, screaming, fussing, the kind of thing that makes her overwhelmed and overstimulated and that leads to fights, right? And so it's like
Wow.
everybody else did their jobs and then they'd leave and she'd just be like, hey, Dad, can you put on some music? I'd be like, yeah. And
I love it.
I would put on some music on the Google Home and she would load the dishwasher. It was just like, oh man, what is going
Jeez.
on right now? And so that was really nice. My and then the other thing is that my 4-year-old is unloading the dishwasher. And he can't do everything because we got cupboards that he can't reach, right? But
Right.
a lot of the silverware, a lot of like the baking bowls, dishes, cooking spoons, and all the kids' plastic dishes are all accessible to him. He can get all of them. And we
Do you
just
do
told
the
him
counter trick with him? Like
to
if you
put
can't
stuff
reach
on
the
the counter.
cupboard, put on the counter below the cupboard, it goes in, and someone taller can just
We haven't
put
done
it up.
that yet, mostly because those counters are usually still dirty when he's
Oh.
unloading the dishwasher. So, but he just leaves them in there. It's not a big right,
Oh,
and
okay.
and he knows like it's my job to help him unload the dishwasher, and so he'll come to me and be like, "Hey, Dad, I did the
Your
low
project
stuff. You
manager is
got yeah,
here,
you got to go do
and
the high stuff now." And he's 4. And I was just like, I think again, we kind of talked about it last week that it's just this idea of maybe I'm underestimating my kids and their ability to do anything. And that quote that you should probably have your kids doing everything they are physically capable of doing for themselves. And
yeah.
I think that really kind of resonated this week. My younger daughter, youngest, she's 3. Well, so I guess he's 5. So he's 5 unloading the dishwasher. My youngest is 3. She she's in charge of clearing and wiping the table. And the trick that we did, and I did this a while ago, and she still really loves it, is we got like a multi cleaner spray, just like a
Hmm.
generic, like Mrs. Myers or Mr. Clean, like
Right.
multi cleaner, whatever, diluted in like a little spray bottle.
Yeah.
Kids
Makes it
love
20 to
spray
1 for indoor
bottles.
application.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
whatever it is. But kids love spray bottles. They love doing the little, as we were like, yeah, here's, if you're wiping the table, you get to do the spray bottle. And she loves it. So she gets
That's
all the
great.
dishes, takes them to the sink for her older sister. And then she goes and she'll take however long she wants. I don't care, right? Like we're teaching her the consistency aspect of it. I don't need a perfectly wiped table. I'll take care of that when she's done. But she does a pretty decent job, and she's using a multi cleaner, so it kind of, she gets mostly clean. But she just goes over there with her little rag and her little spray, and she's 3 years old, and she just sprays
Oh
and
my gosh,
wipes and
that's
sprays and
adorable.
wipes, and it's just like, poof, this is great. So yeah,
Man.
I'm a big fan of just like, and it was pretty much we missed one day this week that they didn't automatically just kind of jump on it. And it was
I
one of
mean,
those
that's pretty
like,
good.
yeah, better than that's still a new record. So,
Right.
uh,
That is you to go from what it was before to almost batting a
yes,
thousand.
I
Like,
know.
I mean,
And it wasn't even like, it was one of those days where everybody had after school activities. And so it was just kind of like, it was harder to define like when dinner started and ended. And I was
well,
kind of
that's the
working and like,
flexibility part of it,
right.
right?
It's
That's
just
where you
kind of what
get,
it was.
I get a little worried about the whole super rigid system. I want the baseline framework so we can move and adjust and adapt.
Mhm.
But then it's way easier to pick back up so it doesn't come all collapsing
Well, and
down.
that's what again, this was on me. I kind of defaulted to, well, now I'm in a bad mood and I'm pissed because you guys didn't do your after dinner chores, and I'm frustrated that I have to remind you every single time. And I was cranky, and I had a long day, and it was just very frustrating. I was sitting on the couch, and I can operate basically everything in my house from my phone. Not like everything, but everything the kids want to do.
Oh, yeah.
And so I basically just went on my phone and I turned off the Wi-Fi to the TV, turned it off the screen time for the Switch, turned out, I just like turned everything off. And then all the kids come
Bring
shuffling
it
back
down the
upstairs.
hammer.
And so I've started doing this thing because I get frustrated, and this is just me, and maybe this is a terrible idea, but because I get frustrated having to remind them every single time. And so
Yeah.
they'll come up and be like, "Hey, why'd you turn off the TV?" And I'm like, "It's a mystery, and you're just gonna have to go on a quest to solve the
Yeah, I
reason
don't hate
why."
that. I don't hate that
I'm
because there's a
like,
lot of take a second to think for your like practice. I'll give you the answer, but you gotta at least take a second to consider, what might be
mhm.
going on. Exercise that party brain maybe a little bit more, and then maybe we won't find ourselves in the situation next time.
Yeah, maybe. So I'm just saying it's a mystery. Let me know if you solve it, right? And my wife
That's
was sitting.
hilarious.
My wife has heard me say this before, and she knows that when I say that, it's because I'm getting frustrated. And and then I kind of got reprimanded by my wife because the kids then asked her like, "Why is Dad turning everything off?" And I was like, "Yeah, why is Dad turning everything off, Mom?" And she was just like, she wasn't feeling it. She didn't want to play the games and my drama. And she was just like, because you guys didn't do your after dinner chores. And they all went, oh. And then they all just went and did them because
Yeah.
they knew exactly what was required. They knew exactly what was expected of them. And they've all been instructed on how to do that job. And I was just like, okay, I recognize now that part of my frustration, like I defaulted to a pre chore list, new chore system mindset where I was going to have to get on them, walk them through it, do half of the jobs myself, yell at them. My daughter would crank at her siblings for doing it wrong or doing it slow. Like I immediately fell into, oh, this is what picking up after dinner looks like. And when it didn't get done, I was like, yeah, this is what that looks like. And I'd forgotten like, no, we've established a new paradigm
Yeah.
and it's working. And if you
Yeah.
just nudge into that new paradigm, and that's what my wife did. She was just like, "Oh, you guys just didn't do your after dinner chores," and they said, "Oh, that's right." And then they all went and did them, and I was like, "Okay, that was the easiest I've ever had to do that." And I have to remember that that's kind of the new world we live in, is that it's not as hard as I think it is to get this
Yeah,
done.
the kids aren't the only one. When we make these changes, so much is on us to follow through with our end of the commit. I think we talked about that last week or the week before,
Yeah,
where it's like when your kid actually does the thing, you have to do your thing. And then we have to be the ones that have the patience. We are the pilot, and when there's an alarm and our passengers are looking to us to understand what's going on, if we're freaking out or we're not doing our job, well, they're not gonna, just fall in line and take
right.
command. And we
Yeah,
we gotta we gotta hold the line and do our job, and it's tough.
yeah, it is. But again, this week I think was the easiest I've ever had to deal with that. So I'm
That's
looking
great.
forward to see. It's 1 week, it's one tiny snapshot. I have no idea how this is going to pan out long term, but it might just be a recurring segment on the pod as we talk about, okay, are my kids still doing their chores?
Yeah,
Because those are
100%.
the
And I
things.
think that's great to see how it morphs over time, and just to see what you said, giving them that extra responsibility, that is not
Mhm.
just chores, right? That's
Yep.
something that will apply to a whole bunch of things. So it'll be cool to see how that applies to our kids as they age up.
Who knows? So
Yeah. But it was a good week. We'll take it.
yeah,
Take the victory.
anytime you can. Perfect. All right, well, should we take a break and then come back? That feels like a natural stopping point.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, we'll take a quick break and we will be right back. All right, Mike, welcome back after the break.
We're back.
This week, I want to talk about video games because I love them. And
Video games have been a big part of my life for a long part of my life.
And also there's this dynamic of being a millennial dad who grew up on video games, trying to share something you love with your kids, and then struggling when it has negative outcomes.
Yeah, right. That's so,
um,
yeah, that is the dichotomy of that. Like, this is not how it was when I was younger. Surely I did not
yeah.
have these same problems.
And so I've been thinking about this for a long time. So I'm kind of excited to talk about this a little bit. And I'm sure this topic will be recurring a little bit, but um, yeah, there's things that are different that make it harder to replicate kind of the experience that we had growing up with video games. And that's kind of what I want to talk about.
Yeah.
So uh I want to start by just asking you, what was your first game system that you
Oh
had growing
man.
up?
I got my brother and I. So I'm the youngest of 8 kids. So my oldest sister, 15 and a half years older than me. She married a guy when I was like 8 years old, Brett.
Sure.
And Brett gave my brother and I an NES and a Super Nintendo. And so an S and a SNES were our very first systems. And I still have them. Every once in a while, I whip them
Wow.
out. There are
They still
games where,
work.
like, oh, yeah, they still work. I replaced
Wow.
the 88 pin connector on the NES
Sure.
one time
Okay.
and improved it a little bit. But I buy games for my SNES that I like want in my library. And to
Yeah.
this day, Super Mario RPG for the Super Nintendo is the greatest game of all time.
Yep.
And every once in a while, I will pull my Super Nintendo out every couple of years and I will play through that game. So that
That's
was
awesome.
my genesis into video games.
I do have a it's up there on my shelf. It's a copy of Mario, the original Mario 3 for NES.
I need to get, wait, no, I did get Mario 3. I think it's Mario
Yeah.
2 that I still need for my
Mario
NES.
2 is the rare one. That's the one that's harder to find.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah. That's awesome. That's
What about
very
you?
similar to we started with an NES, and it was we drove out from Colorado to Utah to stay with my grandma, and we went to the DI in Hiram, Utah, and there
How
was
old are
one
you?
there. I was 9 or 10 probably.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was and we bought it, and we saw it and we knew what it was. My mom was like, I guess you guys can buy a video game system with your own money. And we were like, yes. So it was me and my three brothers. We're all very excited. There was no games with it.
Oh, man.
And so we were like, it was still, it was like, I don't remember how much it was. In nowadays terms, it was probably like $20,
Yeah.
$30 or something. Enough that three brothers could pool their money together and
In the
buy it.
90s.
And then yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I guess it would have been like 99, 2000. Uh we took it back to my grandma's house. And at the time, my mom, I think, was thinking, oh, we'll just leave it at grandma's house. It'll be like the treat when we come to grandma's.
No way.
We opened it up and it had Mario 3 in it.
No
And
way.
they, like, the people at the DI hadn't checked. And we were all just like, because we thought we were going to have to go do more chores, earn more money, and then go to like the local GameStop and try to buy a game.
Right.
We opened it up and there was a game in there. I think it was Mario 3. It might have been Mario 2. I'd have to call my brother and ask. But we were so ecstatic. And we ended up that whole vacation. All we did was just play that Nintendo.
Did it have
And I
one or
just,
two controllers? Do you
two
remember?
controllers. It
Yeah,
came with
two
two controllers.
controllers.
And it was, I just vividly remember, even to this day, seeing that Nintendo in like the old glass cases, at like at a thrift
Oh,
store
yeah.
and being like, oh, I know what that is. We're gonna get that. So that was our first one. I think later on we did have an NES, and I don't remember exactly where it came from. I feel like I bought it off of a friend,
You
but
mean a Super Nintendo?
or a Super Nintendo, yeah, an SNES. And then later we did get an N64, but it was like after everybody had already had one for a
Oh,
long,
yeah.
long time. We bought it used from a neighbor with like three games. So that was kind of like, I think most people, right, started with the NES and the SNES, at least in our
In our, yeah.
in our generation.
I would say if they had older siblings, because growing up, I had a bunch of friends where N64 was their first system.
Mhm.
Because, they're on the older end of their group. And so their parents were probably also just too old to have gotten into an
Yeah.
NES and stuff. And so their parents were younger than my parents, and they skipped that anyway. So N64 for a lot of my friends was their first system, but us, especially the thrift store gang, NES and Super NES was definitely it.
So that was my first system, but my first time, like the first video game I actually ever remember playing, other than like a vague memory of some Tetrisy or something, was when we were living back east. We I remember my dad got a Macintosh from somebody, and it like an old like Macintosh, whatever it was, Mac 2 or something,
Mm-hmm.
and it had a game called Dark Castle.
Okay,
You can look it up
never
after the
heard of
show.
it.
Maybe I'll throw some clips in at this point, but it was old black and white. It was so hard. It was so difficult. And it was just this guy trying to take down like a vampire lord in a dark castle. And you died of bats for like 40 minutes before you got past the first level. Just these little bats that would come like flying across the screen. And all you had was like rocks. You just were throwing rocks at things and trying not to get hit. And it was a wild game. And I remember trying to play it and be terrible. But that was my first like PC game. And then it was years later that we got the Nintendo. And so it's just kind of funny to think about how you kind of got into video games and where that starts.
Yeah, we definitely had some PC games, and it was just always a part of it in the background. Like, definitely
Yeah.
always drawn to it. Had those random games that we would, get into, and that just constantly was rolling over to new stuff as we got older, and between PC and consoles. Although we never had an N64, that's one to this day I have skipped, and I need to add to my collection.
That's funny. You got to get one of those new the new analog ones. Have you seen them?
Yeah, those are cool. I mean, I want
So
an
expensive,
original,
but
but
so cool.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, the reason I kind of wanted to start with that is because I was watching. This was several months ago. I was listening to this podcast and I sent it over to you, kind of review from Linus Tech Tips. The episode is mostly them talking about game. It was right around the time the new Switch was coming out. And they were talking about how games are getting more expensive, and he kind of goes on this little storytelling trip that I think was more to me was more impactful than maybe he realized, talking about what it meant to be to play video games in our childhood. And
Dude, when I was a kid, consoles were a luxury
Oh yeah.
item. Not everyone had one in my class, and no one, not a single other kid I knew, had two current gen consoles at the same time. And like a typical
Yeah,
game
no, for
library,
sure. Yeah.
a typical game library was like 5 games if you were like doing pretty good.
Yeah, a lot of people had less.
And if you had like 10 games, it was
you
like,
were balling.
whoa.
It made me question like what your parents did.
the couple of things that he touched on that I want to kind of relate to is, number one, kind of like we talked about, most people had one system, right? And many times, I mean, it was not uncommon to buy it used a generation late, right?
Yep.
You would buy your N64 from somebody who was buying a GameCube, and that was
Right.
just, unless you were the rich family on the block or the
Yep.
rich family at school, you got the new stuff, and then you sold your old stuff to your buddies.
Yep.
And that was how, most of us, I feel like, afforded.
Oh,
I mean,
we
you got yours
lived in the
from your
secondhand market.
brother-in-law, and
Yeah.
yeah. And
Oh
there
yeah,
was
we
this
wouldn't have bought
huge,
one. My parents wouldn't have bought one.
so it's very common, right? That you would have one system. And even beyond that, what Linus Tech talks about in this podcast is then you would have one or two games. Like that was the standard, right? And like you
Yep.
heard me, I was like, we were all gonna pool our money together and buy one game.
Yeah.
And then we had a free game. Had two games. We
And that
were
was a big
living.
deal.
I know it was a huge deal, right? And it was partly just because things, disposable income, electronics, like there's a whole economic lesson, right? I'm sure around this. My main focus though is just on what that meant to us as kids playing video games from a mental, social, developmental perspective, which was, and there's lots of lessons to pull from this. I mean, things like you had to go talk to your buddies and you'd borrow games, you'd trade games, right?
Yep.
You
Go to
didn't have
Hollywood
access.
Video, which is
You
what we
would
had in the
rent
Bay Area.
games,
Rent
and then you would
games.
have an epic weekend where you played the crap out of one game and then you take it back.
Yep.
And there wasn't this expectation of, I could play it whenever I want and I can finish it whenever I want. And
Yeah.
I have access to every game on the face of the planet, right? Um, and so I think that those kind of ideas are something that's lost when we talk about screen time. I'm constantly concerned about my kids' screen time, constantly thinking about it. Um, this is just part of being a dad in 2026 now,
Right.
right?
Right.
Is
This
is
is just part of
managing
our
screen
world.
time. Mhm.
Yeah. Like back in the day, there were different things to manage because of that environment, threats to children, physically, emotionally,
Sure, yeah.
mentally, and that has shifted to a whole new breadth of issues that we deal with that have never been dealt with before, right? Like we are the
Right.
first generation to go from that play outside, come home when the lights on the street lights turn on, to you've been in the basement for 12 hours on a Saturday. You need to go outside. We've
Right.
seen all of that,
Both of
and
those.
it's up to yeah, it's been up to us. Our generation has to somehow bridge those worlds.
And I think that that's kind of the key is what you're saying is that we, and I won't say I'm perfect at it, but we had to kind of learn to manage that in some sense on our own because our parents didn't have any, they didn't have a wealth of knowledge in that area to draw on and be
Right.
like, oh, how do you, manage addiction to screens and doing other things. So,
Well, if you think of also their generation, how this creeped up on them, it used to be kids going to the arcade if they want to play video games, right? Like there was all this effort to go and get that dopamine experience. And you would spend money every time you went to the arcade. You didn't own anything, but you were spending your money to be able to play. But it was often very social. You had to wait for games. And then that led into the next most available thing where now you have a console in your home for this upfront cost and the time it took there, and
right,
that progression has not stopped. That um, access to children's attention and the cost for that access has done nothing but continue to grow.
right,
And how do we manage that?
right. I think for me as well, it's the lack of physical, operating in reality interactions that are required to play games.
Yeah.
Like you said, back in the day, you go down to the Hollywood Video, and it's like, oh yeah, you'd go there, you get the game, you come back and play it. But that doesn't take into account that that was a real physical experience. That was you dodging traffic or playing game. Like it wasn't just you ride straight there. It's,
Your
you
mom saying you
rolling
have 15
around.
minutes to pick your game, and you just stand there with analysis paralysis trying to figure out
Sure.
what
I mean,
game
that's
am I
part
going
of
to
the
grab.
experience. Or if you
Yeah.
ride your bike, right? You're riding through the neighborhood, you're dodging traffic, you stop at the gas station, get a snack, and then you go to the store, you rent your game. That's all part of this process that now is replaced by a click of the button. And sometimes I wonder, like, oh, if I could add more of that kind of physical interaction, if I made my kids ride around the block every time they want a new game, and then they
Yeah.
only get the game for 3 days, it's those kind of interactions that I think about were beneficial in helping us understand and balance that kind of reward and work aspect of that. Um, how many games do you guys have?
Oh man. So I mean, I collect consoles.
Sure, yeah,
But the console that is regularly used is our Switch. We have an original Nintendo Switch, and it has been a problem. In fact, last night the boys is like, let's play Mario Golf together. The girls went out and did something. We played Mario Golf. It was a blast. But because of that, our youngest, he's the one that he could just lock in all day and forget to eat.
sure,
And the older boy, he tires out. He wants to go play Legos, something like that. But
yeah,
anyway, I came down this morning. He hadn't eaten breakfast, and he had the Switch in his hands. And
yep,
I'm like, brother, we had fun last night, but that rule
yeah,
where you can't just hop on yourself and have personal screen time, like that's still there. And so Switch went
yep,
away again.
yep,
And so that's the big struggle we have is really the Nintendo Switch.
yeah. Do you guys have a big library then?
It's decent. It's the essentials,
So, but
Smash,
in the
like
context of as a kid, we had one or two
oh yeah.
games.
What I mean, granted, when we got the NES, my brother-in-law gave me like 20 games with it,
Sure,
which was
sure.
nuts.
Yeah, that
But
is nuts.
and he hones in usually on Zelda. That's like his one. But
Yeah.
yeah, he can definitely bounce between games.
Oh yeah. do you guys have the parental controls set up on the phone on the app?
So on the yeah. So I have a timer
Yeah.
set up, and
Okay.
somehow it keeps getting longer and longer, and I have to totally reset it. But there is a timer, and they're pretty good about keeping to it. But it makes sure I'm always involved so it doesn't get out of
Yeah.
hand.
Sure. I'm always curious because I've gone through a couple of different systems and apps, and the Nintendo one is fine. Right. And I think that's
Yeah,
part of the discussion here as a millennial dad. You're trying to create, like you want to teach your kids consistency and like diligence and how to self-manage and to kind of take care of their emotions and be able to call their own shots, but at the same time they're kids, so we have to
right,
introduce limits and things. And I get frustrated when these big companies don't give you the tools to do that on
right.
like a real basis. Nintendo is okay, and
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about because their app is kind of confusing and isn't the easiest. I had to go in and just manually set every single day. Because again, in the app, this is gonna, like, here's a little rant for you. In the app, you can set a global, this is how many minutes per day you're allowed to play,
Mm-hmm.
but it can't be zero unless you go in and say, I want to manually set the limits for each day of the week.
Got it.
So if you're global, like you're only allowed, then the minimum is 15 minutes for some reason. If you
Yeah.
go in and say, I would like to manually set my time limit for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, then you can go set each of those to zero. And
And
that's
it's
what I had
very
to do, right? Like I get so
pretty
frustrated
tedious.
at these apps.
You can't just say,
And
"All right, Sundays, no time on Sundays only,"
so you
and
can, so you
oh,
can,
you
you
can.
can
Okay.
set zero, but only on a day by day basis, not as a global rate,
Okay.
like restriction. So you have to go in and manually set
Got it.
every
If you
single
just want to
day
cut
as
off
zero.
access for a while, you
You
have to
have to
manually
go
go in and do
set
that,
zero. And so I've done
or
that, and it's
lock it in
still
your
a pain in the
safe.
butt. But then there's a bug because you go in and there's a button that's like add more time, and that's my favorite because it's like, oh, are your
Right.
chores done? Here's 30 minutes.
Right.
But on Saturdays, or if I've had a long day, sometimes I'm like, just unlock it completely, let them have as much time as they want the rest of the night. They've done everything they need to do. I don't care. But you can't do that. You have, because there's a bug in the system, you have to set it to some other amount first, 5, 10,
Oh,
15, 30 minutes or an hour,
and then you can
and then go
expand
through
on
the whole
that.
process of like unlock 1 hour, save, add additional, yes, done, and then I can set it to unlimited. Because if I just jump straight to unlimited, there's a bug that it doesn't give them the unlimited time.
Interesting.
It's the most frustrating thing ever. And if like the Wi-Fi is a little spotty in the basement, then the switch doesn't communicate right, and I have to
Right.
do it like 3 times, and like there's all this stuff. And we've started having this conversation with my kids. That's if it is more work for me to manage your screen time than it is, like there's a level here that I'm
Right.
doing more work managing your screen time. And at some point, I'm just going to say no screen
Yeah.
time because it's too much work to do it. And the Nintendo's been pushing me in that direction, but we do okay. Uh, Steam has a family library feature now with great family controls.
Really.
It is amazing. I wish more people used it, but PC versus console, it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
uh, they have a family thing. I created an account for my two older kids, and so they can play all of my Steam games, which is wild. Family share program.
That's cool.
I can select which of my games they can see and play. I can set screen time limits. I can make it so they can't talk to anybody. They can't see the store. They can't do, I mean, like all of these great granular controls. And I'm like,
That's
ugh.
awesome.
And more, I'm like, this puppy's about to become the main console in the house because
Yeah.
it's just so much easier. But the other feature that we played around with was you can not let them play certain games. You can limit specific games on the Switch,
Right.
which is awesome in this context of, hey, maybe my kids don't need every single game on the face of the planet.
Right.
So what I kind of wanted to talk about was, I'm going a little all over the place, but last summer we did our 90s summer. And we sat down the kids and we said, hey, We want to do this. We think it'll be kind of fun and give you guys a new experience. And the kids were surprisingly pretty on board. So I went into my home media server, locked every TV show and movie that didn't come out before the year 2000. And then I went into the Switch and locked every game that didn't come out before the year 2000.
Oh, this is cool.
And that's how we spent our summer. And surprisingly, the kids didn't complain that much. There wasn't a lot that they missed. But the real gem that we pulled from that experience was having them giving them less choice made them better kids. And that when they had less choices, they self-managed their screen time better.
Yeah.
They would
That
watch.
that totally tracks.
Oh yeah.
And I would even say less choice is part of it, but also the effort it takes to change your choice
Mhm.
is a big deal. So we got our girls for Christmas a TV VCR combo for their bedroom.
Yep.
Best purchase if your kids are wanting a screen in their bedroom. I am on board with the TV VCR combo. You get to completely decide what media library they're allowed to have. On their
Sure.
bookshelf, they have books and they have VHS tapes, and we'll go with them and help them buy VHS tapes. They're cheap. It
Mhm.
takes effort to actually watch a movie because they have to rewind it. I bought this universal remote, so they have this big chunky remote. They hit play, and when they're done, they have to
Yeah.
rewind it. They put in a movie that's not rewound. They're not just bouncing around clicking to things. They commit to a long form story thing, and they get that raw experience.
Mhm.
100% recommend it. They're getting more expensive every day, the TV VCR combos.
Everybody's trying to pick them up.
Yeah. And so I totally agree with it's something about their ability to make a choice and stick with it and see it out. Seems to be really important for just a kid's day-to-day lived experience.
Yeah, and I think that part of I'm trying to keep this to video games because I'm sure we'll have another one for movies and TVs, but
Right.
the idea that you play through one game or you watch one movie all the way through, right? And that was a concept that was not new or, uncommon in our when we were growing up.
That's what you wanted to do. Like you
Right,
got the game to beat it.
you would borrow a game from a buddy that he had beat. He beat the
Yeah.
game. He doesn't need the game anymore. He beat it.
Right.
And then he'd let you borrow it. You'd go play it. And then you'd have this shared experience of like, oh, how did you do this? How did you beat this boss? What choices did you make in the game? How did you build your character? What, like all of that became an integral part of growing up was managing and those social relationships surrounding video games and the scarcity of video games, creating all of these unique and interesting kind of moments and social growth. And when we did our 90s summer, one of the coolest things was, it was very unstructured. It's not like as a millennial dad, I really wanted to be like, hey, you should play these games. They're fantastic.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Instead, we just limited them. And they still had, because we had the Switch online
Mm-hmm.
thing, which gives you all of the N64,
Right.
NES. So it's a ton of games still. But one of the coolest things ever was hearing my kids screaming, laughing, that like laughing that's just
Mm-hmm.
out of control and having no idea what was going on. And I go downstairs, I'm like, what is going on? Why are you guys so loud? And they're laughing so hard that they can't even sit on the ground, rolling on the floor with
I
the
love that.
controllers in their hands. And they're playing 007 slappers. And I'm
Oh,
like,
007 is the greatest. Like,
N64,
oh my
double
gosh.
007 James Bond, and they're dying. And I'm like, I didn't set this up. I didn't tell them about this. And they discovered the
Wow.
joy of 007 slappers all on their own.
Yeah, I remember that vividly. Like, that was the best. In fact, I'm surprised they have not made a 007 reprisal that's multiplayer for the Switch because that would kill. That would absolutely kill to be able to play slappers online.
And it was hilarious. And they asked me to play, and I was like, oh, yeah, I'll kick their butts. Those controllers are wonky. I forgot how like bad the 007, but they didn't care. They had no like it was just all of a sudden, I think as a millennial dad, I try so hard to recreate my childhood. And it turns out that what they needed was just for me to get rid of everything that wasn't my childhood. right?
Yeah.
To give them some of those experiences. And it was such a really cool moment. And the same with the TV shows. I came down one day and they were watching Recess, you know, the TV show, and just laughing. And they're in school and it's about school and this adventure, and you realize, man, it's just so cool. They watched Darkwing Duck and all of these old TV shows, and it just really, over the course of that was a really cool piece of it. It was later on in the summer that really started to change things, when we realized that they'd kind of gone through the library,
Yeah.
right? We'd been through, after a couple of months, we'd been through the library. They'd watched most of the shows, a lot of the movies, and played most of the games. And then they self-selected to go do something else.
Wow.
They just stopped kind of watching TV and playing video games as much. They just
Wow. That's
reached a
cool.
they reached a limit where they'd kind of been through the library, and
Yeah.
then they just went outside and played. And I was like, okay, that's what we've been missing.
Yeah.
Right? It's you give them those limits, you reach the limit, and then you say, what else
Uh,
is there?
yeah. I
I'm gonna
finished
go
it.
do something else. Yeah.
I mean, because
And
that's the trap today is the bottomless pit. And
the
that's
infinite
why,
scroll
yeah,
is,
infinite scroll. And it's the same with games. There's always another app. There's always more. I mean,
always.
even like Zelda, both the games, to actually complete everything is so big. And then when you're done, you can still explore the world and do new stuff. Like it really is bottomless. And that is something to pay attention to.
Which is, there's good games. I'm not saying that
Right.
there's not, right?
Oh, I,
That
I
there are,
love Zelda.
right?
Like Breath
Ogre,
of the
yeah,
Wild
Breath of the Wild
and
is phenomenal.
oh, favorite game.
But it made me realize, like, one of the problems is just them having too much. And the way I started kind of putting it is, I want to start giving my kids depth instead of breadth, right? I want to You give them access to a limited amount of things, let them play the absolute crap out of it, and then cycle it out on some kind of seasonal basis. And you
Yeah.
you decide what that is, spring, summer, or just a monthly. And this isn't a new concept, right? I think I've seen stuff like this for years and years about just toys, right? They're like, oh, your kids aren't playing with their toys, you need to cycle their toys out.
Yeah. We try to do that every year.
And it turns out you probably should just be doing it with TV and movies
Yeah.
and video games. You should figure it out. And
Interesting.
and that's not something, it's one of the reasons I'm so happy that I run a home server for my media. And same idea as getting a DVD VCR combo, right? That
Mm-hmm.
give them limited access to a set few amount of things.
Yep.
And that's just what it is. So that's been something I need to re-implement, because the 90 summer was up. I went in and just kind of unlocked everything. I said, oh, that was a fun thing. I loved that. You guys can play whatever you want now. And here we are 6 months later, and I'm like, oh, maybe it's time to do an early 2000s night. Like let's just move the decade up a little bit.
Right.
And maybe it just needs to be a yearly, like fall is the 80s and the 90s is the spring and the summer, like whatever it is. And maybe it's just, hey, what do you guys want to watch this season? And
Yeah.
you get to pick 5 shows and 20 movies, and that's it. And that's what we have. And then if you don't like it, go play Legos, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I like
so
that. I think that,
I don't know.
I mean, that's hard because also we enjoy having options and we've burned through stuff. We are working through Star Trek right now, and that's like our show. And we've dived in and
That's
we're
cool.
burning through that. But implementing that with the kids and understanding why it's important to limit choice is an interesting, I mean, it's definitely the opposite direction of what the world is trying to say, right? Like have
Yeah.
everything all at once, um, own nothing and you'll be happy, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
own nothing but have access to everything. And that seems to make people really sad,
Yeah.
like without them realizing it, because
Yeah.
we're just getting hijacked. And so I'd have to explore how we could implement something similar, because there's definitely stuff we can do, especially with the consoles. Like I could be like, you know what, Super Nintendo, and here's the games, and this is what you have access to,
Well,
and that's it.
and again, at the core, a lot of these services just don't provide anything like that, right?
Right.
It's, you get onto Disney or Netflix. It's like, well, you can make a kids account, but we decide what's
Yeah.
best for your kids.
Yeah.
And I'm not into that. And even Nintendo, it says, oh, you can definitely lock games from your kids so they can't play them, but we'll still show them that they're there.
Right.
They just can't open it. And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that that's not helping me, right?
Right.
Because then they just come say, "Hey, how come this game isn't working?" I'm like, "Well, because I locked it, and I have to go in, I have to manually delete it from the Switch, I have to, and then lock it, and then they can't. Hopefully, they can't see it unless they go search the whole library, and then it still kind of shows up as a possible game."
Yeah.
Whereas with Steam, when I did it for the Steam Deck, they don't see it at all. They see like the 5 games that I'm from my library that I said that they could play.
And I wonder how
Nothing.
big of a component that plays into the psychology is the awareness of the access you could have versus what you do. Yeah, seeing all those games. Oh, I want those other ones, but I can only play these versus you just visually see what you have access to.
Mhm.
I think you might be onto something that could have pretty, that could be a big piece of this puzzle. Just you don't have to sort through anything emotionally. You don't have to parse all this extra information. Here it is. That's what you get. Go for it, which is something we talked about the other week, right? Like kids parsing information, and that being a problem. So I think we're starting to see a little trend there. So I like this idea. So if there's any services out there that hear this,
Yeah,
we came up with it, and
yeah, that's right.
like
We
yeah,
want
where you just
credit.
you allow a library, and that's the library, and that's it.
And that's what I
This is
think I'm
cool.
going to be. I think that's a great thing. That's why I love doing this podcast with you, is because I'm hoping this week will be the week that I can sit down with my kids and say, all right, we're going to limit some of this stuff, but I'll let you guys pick.
Yeah,
What do you guys want to watch until, it's February now, summer's in May, 3, 4 months. That's a pretty, solid. We'll do a quarter of the year and you pick, and that's what we'll have for the time being. Right.
yeah. Yeah, I could see doing that. Like, pull out the Super Nintendo, get 5 games, and be like, "You guys, when your stuff is done, this is your. If you want to play a game, you may play from this, and that's it." And there's some 2-player games in there, and you know, give that a shot. It might
And
be.
I don't know, because I don't have an Xbox or PlayStation, so I can't speak to how their parental controls are set up. I'd be interested if one of our 5 viewers does have any
Yeah,
experience with that. Let us
I've
know.
got one. I've never dug into it though.
Yeah, because I'd be interested, but it's one of the reasons I'm really excited about the new Steam machine coming up. Because I'm like, yeah, I know that Steam's parental controls are awesome. They would have
Yeah,
full access to my entire library. Like I don't need Nintendo's not providing me anything as a father that I feel
yeah,
like is critical to my kids' experience anymore. And
yeah,
I want the tools to give them a better relationship with video games
yeah.
than they
Well,
currently
and
have.
maybe what
So
we can also do is we can facilitate those moments and recreate them. So,
yeah,
how much time do we have? I know we got 4
4 minutes.
minutes, so we might have to open it up another another thing.
Or save it for
Um,
another day. It's fine.
well, so yeah, so just real quick, every year for my birthday, I do a Halo LAN party,
Sure.
and so this year it was I think 8 of us, one floated out, so we always had 8. I had 2 plasma screens, 2 Xbox 360s, Halo Reach, 8 controllers,
Yeah.
and we made custom games and we played Halo Reach for hours and had junk food. And like that, I remember that as a kid. I remember going to Matt and Chris Roberts' house, and we had to lean back because they had a slanted roof. And so our screen was a projector that was projecting onto that slanted ceiling. And we had to lean back so we could play on the projector. And other people were in the room next door on
Yeah.
a TV. And we had wires running across the house, and we played Halo Reach. Or not, it wasn't Reach back then, it was just the original Halo. And so maybe that would be something we could do for our kids, is recreating that kind of
That would be a
social
fun thing to do.
version of gaming. And so I think I'll have to look into that for my
Yeah.
kids and their friends, see if I can
Actually, that's a
something
fantastic
something
idea.
similar.
Yeah.
Even if it's not Halo, because Halo's not bloody, so I think I can get back on board potentially
Yeah.
with that game.
Yes.
Um, but something similar to
Smash
that to
Brothers.
recreate.
Smash Brothers is always
Yeah,
a winner.
Smash is sweet. Yeah.
Always a winner. Yeah.
So, or Mario Kart.
Well, I'm excited to hear how this works out for you guys. I have some ideas.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to kind of implement some stuff, experiment, and then we'll report back.
Cool.
Let you
Yeah,
know
I'll
how
talk with
it's going.
Becca
So
and we'll figure something out.
yeah, that'll be fun. Well, thank you for joining me today, Michael. It's been a pleasure.
This is awesome. It was good to throw back to some of the
Yeah,
good old
happy
days.
I can.
We are those people now. We are
I know.
those people with
I
the good
know.
old days.
The good old days. So thanks for listening, everybody out there that has. We appreciate it. Again, I'm Nate. If you are into hot sauce, that's what I sell. GrumpyDadHotSauce.com. And Mike, where are you at?
So you can find my shop on Etsy. Express 3D Customs is my primary. I also have another company, Caveman LLC, where we make accessories for firearms around temperature detection and stuff like that. So you can find us cavemanllc.net or at Etsy at express3dcustoms.etsy.com.
Awesome. Thank you. We will
See you next week. All right, later, man. I like John Williams music. That's all.